I've warned many times on this show, there is a nasty element now in our political debate. Today, more evidence. A protester at a Country Women's Association event, of all things, threw an egg at the Prime Minister before being arrested. An elderly woman was knocked over in that confrontation.
Well, pardon the pun, but I don't want to over-egg this thing. But at the same time, what my concern was for Margaret and the disregard the individual seemed to have for those others who are in the room. And Margaret was a more elderly woman and she was bowled over in the exchange. And I was able to help her up to her feet.
This is appalling and disgraceful behaviour. In Australia, we have violence-free elections. People are allowed to protest peacefully, but anything approaching violence is completely unacceptable. If this protester thinks that she will get any sympathy or support from me, she couldn't be more wrong.
The 25-year-old woman who attacked the Prime Minister, she turns out to be a Green supporter. This is my shocked face. Didn't I warn the Greens leader, Richard Di Natale, of the hatred that he was whipping up in this studio just a couple of weeks ago? I'll play you a clip at the end of the show. Don't miss it. But this Green supporter, well, clearly a very impressionable woman. She actually copied a similar attack by a leftist on far-right Senator Fraser Anning, violence that was widely cheered on social media. And she later said she'd attacked the Prime Minister because that got her message through. And she didn't seem sorry.
Peaceful protest, is effective.
So that was a premeditated approach to come here and hit the Prime Minister with an egg, was it?
I've got the vision.
Did you intend for an older woman to fall over as well?
No, that was not my intent.
But that was
I am sorry for that.
Now, it's true, these attacks just with eggs, they're not with bullets, thank God, or not yet. But they still make politicians more worried about meeting voters. And that makes these attacks on our democracy. And other attacks, in fact, are even nastier. And note this well, almost all of them are from the left. Former Liberal Prime Minister Tony Abbott, for instance, was headbutted in the street by a same-sex marriage supporter, also with lots of support on social media. Last week, protesters plastered Abbott's electorate with protesters with the C word printed over a caricature of his face. And today, more nastiness. Someone left a hollowed-out book filled with faeces outside Abbott's office. No one hates quite so inventively like the left. Over in South Australia, more intimidation, or alleged intimidation, of two Liberal candidates. Georgina Downer complained to police of being stalked by a man helping the campaign of Rebecca Sharkey. He says he's innocent, but has been charged. And Nicole Flint also complained about being stalked by this man in the window photographing this Liberal MP. He also says he's innocent, but police have given him a warning. Now, all this is against the wider background of bullying, of abuse, of screaming down debates, and it's all making me wonder what's coming next. Now, discussing our differences on global warming, say, is becoming so difficult, even dangerous. For instance, libertarian and right-wing speakers visiting Australia face violent protests. I've been physically attacked in the street. Experts like Professor Peter Ridd, who challenged the global warming scare, have been sacked by the university. And a top economist, Brian Fisher, who last week costed Labor's global warming scheme at more than $250 billion, had his house egged the next morning by activists. Meanwhile, vegan militants last month blocked peak hour traffic in Melbourne and stormed abattoirs, also stormed farms.
Stop stealing my animals. You're not going to steal my animals today, putting them out in the road.
Green protesters seem to be the worst in shouting down people. It's like their cause is so holy that they can treat their enemies as evil, do anything they like to them. Anti-Adani protesters, they've been shouting down speeches by the Prime Minister, but also speeches by the Labor leader.
You know, I've said it a number of times, and you've heard me say it. You know, we've just got to disagree better about these things. Just because you have a difference of view to someone doesn't mean that you have to engage in these sort of ugly types of protests.
What a coincidence. No protesters at all interrupt the speeches of Greens leader Richard Di Natale. As I say, the enemies of debate and free speech are almost all on the left, not the right. In fact, as I mentioned last night, Di Natale is plotting even more laws to shut up critics of him and his kind of policies.
Making sure that there are laws that protect the community against the hate speech of people like Andrew Bolt.
Now, to repeat, no one has been shot yet, OK? Let's put it in perspective. No one's been shot like Labor leader Arthur Calwell was in 1966, shot by a budding poet with mental issues trying to make himself famous. But that said, there's no denying that something toxic is growing here. A more general disrespect and intolerance, a climate of abuse. I mean, given all that, do Labor politicians really need to feed this kind of hate speech against the Liberals?
Coal-wielding, climate-denying cave dweller on this issue.
They are small men with small ideas.
OK, put that to one side, but here is a clue to what's going on. People who resort to violence and abuse and screaming down people, you know, I reckon they just know they're too dumb to win a debate with reason and logic. So, whatever the cause these people are pushing, watch out and resist, because their violence tells you their cause has no brains behind it.